Ho ho ho! Now, let me answer the question that I know you're all asking. Are you the real Santa Claus? No. Actually, this is a hat I got for $2. So this is what we're going to be making. A Santa hat. Because, I don't know if you realize, it is December 22, Christmas theme. I thought about doing like a Santa going through the sky with a sleigh and snow and a moon or something like that, and I thought, nah, that's too hard. And then I realized a lot of you guys have been asking me to do a fur tutorial on like hair and stuff like that. So, two birds with one stone. So that's what we're going to do. So, let me show you a close-up of this hat. Alright, so this is to give you an idea of what a real Santa hat looks like up close. As you can see, there are two main types of fur. I'm sure you can see this, but I'm pointing it out anyway. You got the main white fluffy bit, which is this coarse kind of grainy type hair, and then you've got this soft, almost velvet type fur in the middle there, which, as you can see, is kind of like big clumps of hair together. And this part is also kind of clumpy, but it's a lot thinner, and you catch a lot of the light shining through it as well. So that's to give you an idea of you know, what a real one looks like up close. And now let's get into Blender. Alright, so this is the finished result that we are striving to achieve. I'll just show you what the finished scene is made up of before we get started on our own. But we've got one basic mesh here. You'll notice it's all one mesh. It's not split up, so I'll be showing you how to apply two different types of fur to the same mesh. We've got a very simple lighting setup here as well, but the primary focus for this tutorial will of course be all about the fur. So creating that sort of nice fluffy type of fur or velvety type fur, you know, getting the nice sort of clumpy wavy types effects, and also the materials, also equally important, getting those materials right, and how to make it work with the lighting, you know, which lamps to choose for the correct, you know, to get shadows showing up and things like that. So yeah, so if you're new to fur and you're wanting to get into it, this is probably a great place to start. So let's get into it. Start by opening up a new scene. So the first thing I'm going to do is delete the default cube and replace it with a cylinder. Now this cylinder is going to be the Santa hat, okay? So I'm going to uncheck cap end so it's nice and hollow. And the reason I'm using a cylinder instead of a cone is so that we can add loop cuts later on. Okay, so with this mesh here, what I'm going to do is scale down the top row of vertices, like so, and just bring it up just so it's a little bit taller, like that. And now I'm going to add some loop cuts, which is what you can't do if you used a cone. Okay, so that's pretty good. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is add, so you know that white fluffy rim around the edge? I'm just going to create some base mesh for that, like this. Just extruding it and inwards. It's pretty easy just to create a little edge like that, fairly simple. And now I'm going to add a subsurf modifier. And what that'll do is it'll just give the cloth simulator a little bit more vertices to play with. Now I'm not going to add the little ball on the end, just because with the cloth simulator it can interfere a little bit and can look a little bit weird, so I'm just going to leave that out for now, and we're going to add it sort of in the final stages. Okay, so now we've got the basic Santa hat working. What I'm going to do now is add a plane. Because what we're going to do is we're going to be dropping this cone using the cloth simulator onto the plane, and hopefully creating realistic wrinkles and, you know, fabric things like that. Okay, so with the cone selected, let's go to the physics panel and add the cloth simulator. Now the default sort of cotton preset there should be fine. I'm just going to lower the mass amount to 0.2 just to make it a bit lighter. Set the structural amount to 30 just to make it just a little bit more stiffer, and the bending amount to 7 as well, just to, I don't know, also make it more stiffer and bigger wrinkles. The dampening amount I'm going to set to 25, and that'll just make it less bouncy and a little bit more smooth. One important one though is under here, under cloth collision, you need to check self collision, and I'm going to turn it up to 3. Now,
self-collision is important because this is going to be lying a lot on each other, like it's going to fall into itself. And if you don't have self-collision, and if you don't set the quality high enough, then you will see the mesh intersect in places, and it's a pain. Okay, so now that that's set up, we need to, first of all, select the plane, and then underneath physics, click Add Collision. Okay, so now if we hit Alt-A, what you should see happen is the top of your cone should mesh and deform like that for some silly reason. I think it's because self-collision and it's too close to each other and it does that thing. But as you can see, it's now interacting with the plane as it should, and it's all falling in together like fabric. Unfortunately, it looks kind of like a, I don't know, like a Stargate type thing sort of oozing in and out. Doesn't look right. What we want it to do is to actually sort of fall on its side, like it's almost been chucked on a table or something. So I'm just going to rotate it like that, and hopefully, fingers crossed, this should work. I don't know, it's kind of like, you know, they say like for working with TV, you should never work with children or animals. I think with 3D artists, I think never work with simulations, especially if you're making a tutorial, because you never know how it's going to behave. You never know what it's going to do. If it's just going to suddenly go spastic and make you look like a spastic, or if it's going to behave. So hopefully this, oh, it's twisting. I don't know what it's doing. It's kind of a gamble. You never know what it's going to do. But I think, oh no, it might actually look all right. What I wanted to do is to just, you sort of have that edge there and not have the other edge showing. And I think that's looking okay. I think, yeah, I think that's going to do. That's all right. Okay, so once you've got the mesh that you want, don't hit tab because that will ruin the simulation. What you need to do is go underneath the modifier stacker and apply both of these stackers in their order. So click apply and then apply. And now if you hit tab, you should see you can now edit the mesh as is. So that's now frozen in that state. It's now completely deformed. The only way you can go back is if you hit Control Z. We're not going to do that because that's looking pretty good. One thing you'll notice is that this end right here, the mesh is intersecting and it's looking pretty awful. A quick way to fix that, if you don't want to have to redo the whole simulation, if you just select those vertices like that, then hit W and then select smooth, you'll see that they also slightly move. And the more you click that, oh, what did I hit? Hit the wrong one. The more you hit smooth like that, then they all start behaving. That was a quick tip Andy showed at the 2009 Blender conference, I think. He just did that repeatedly. It was kind of cool. But yeah, just note that the more times you do that, then you will lose definition in the wrinkle. But I think that's, I mean, even though that mesh is intersecting there, it's not that too big of a problem. That's fine. Okay, so now let's get into the particle simulator, or adding the fur, or the hair, whatever you want to call it. So go to the particle settings, click add, and then select hair. Now, the first particle system we're going to create is the red fur. So that's the main sort of very short, coarse type hair in this center section right here. So I'm going to set the normal to a 0.01 like that. And I'm just going to turn up the Brownian to a 0.02. Main one though is we're going to increase the number of particles to 100,000. And you might be thinking that's a lot of particles, Andrew. And you're right. But we want it to look even all over the entire thing, and that's what I found gives the nicest results. However, there's a problem. You'll notice that on this edge here, where there's going to be that white fluffy rim, it's put our fur all over it, and we don't want that. We want to create a separate particle system for that white fluffy fur. So, to make it so that the fur applies to one part of a mesh and not the other, what you need to do is go to the vertex groups here and click plus. Okay, you might be wondering what I'm doing. Stay with me. If you go to edit mode, select all the vertices, and then holding down Shift and Alt, we're going to unselect this edge right here. Okay, and then I'm going to hit assign. And what that will do, I'll just show you. If you go into weight paint mode, what this is showing you is that this part over here, which is red, that's giving it a value of 1. And this part here, which is blue, is giving it a value of 0. And there's different colors in between, but those are the two main ones. So basically, the parts that are red, there's going to be fur, and the parts that are blue, there isn't. Now, if you go back to the fur, you'll notice that nothing has changed. what you need to do is go down to the particles in the particle settings under vertex groups, and where it says density, select the name of the group. And there you go. So now the fur is now applied to that part and not this white rim, which is great. Just what we wanted. Now, we're going to create another particle system, but before we do, I'm going to rename this to red so we can tell the difference. And I'm going to rename this one to white. Okay. So now we want some white fluffy fur around the edge. So I'm going to turn this normal value down to a 0.02 and the Brownian value to a 0.05. Now these are values, like I said in the past, that I've played with and I found that they work well, so that's why I'm using them. Now the main one that we're gonna that's important is the children particles. The children particles create sort of multiple particles around these particles up here, 100,000 particles. So it's essentially timesing that value there, 1,000, by this value, render value, 100. So essentially you get 100,000 particles showing up in the scene, which is too many. I'm gonna set that to 40. Okay, so now you get 40,000 particles. But what's more is I'm actually going to increase this to 13,000. Now, the main reason for using children particles is that children particles will follow the shape and pattern of their parenting particles. So you can add, this Brownian value and you get the curvature, but by adding children particles, you'll create 40 particles around that parent one. So it looks kind of like a clump. So that's how you get that sort of wavy, clumpy, fluffy type look to it. It's by using children particles. So that's just a quick little tip there for you. Okay, now you'll notice that fur here is black for some silly reason. We'll fix that in a minute. But it's black and it's applying to the entire mesh. So again, we need to apply it to just that outer edge. So to fix that, I'm just going to turn off these particle systems so it displays a bit better. You'll notice that these vertices are still selected. Quick tip, if you press Control-I, it will invert your selection. Pretty cool. And in fact, if you want to know more keyboard shortcuts, why not download the cheat sheet, which is available in the sidebar there if you want to check it out. It's pretty good. Okay, so Control-I inverts the selection. And then if you go to the vertex group here, I'm going to add another vertex group. I'm going to call it white. I'm just going to label this one red so we can tell the difference. White, and click Assign. Now, if you have a look at the weight paint mode, the red is applying to the part which is supposed to be red, and the white is applying to the edge, as it should, which is great. Awesome. Getting pretty excited, I know. So, let's go to our white particle system, and again, vertex group, you need to select the name of the vertex group, which is that one, and now if I make it so that it shows up, you'll see you get that. Now it's showing up as black, but we're going to fix that right now. So we're going to get into the materials now. So again, we're going to need two materials. Let's work on, first of all, the red material. Okay, now that black thing is now finally finished, which is great. So I'm going to name this one red, set the diffuse to a red color. And in fact, I've noticed if you just give it a slightly blue value there, so it's, red is 0.8 and then a blue, just slightly, it just makes it less like an assault on the eyes. Having like a big solid red color just looks, makes like nails on a chalkboard. So just give it just a slightly, little bit of blue there, and just helps to soften it a little bit, I found, which is nice. Okay. The main value which is going to affect how the particles look is down here in the strand settings. So this is the size of each of those particles. So what I'm going to do is for this one, because it's going to be the slight, sort of short, coarse type hair, I'm going to set this to 0.00. Actually, first of all, you need to click Blender Units. If you leave Blender Units off, what it'll do is these values here will correlate to pixels on your screen. Blender Units changes those values to actual Blender units in the scene. So now I can set this to 0.004 and 0.0004. So what that's going to do, if I go up here and check the hair option there, you can't see it very much. I'm going to change this to 2.4 for minimum. It's going from a thick base to a point at the end. Now, having it as minimum, what that will do is that it'll give you, by default, as a pure minimum, the smallest that the particles can look is a 2.4 Blender unit on your screen. Don't worry if any of this confuses you. I don't properly understand it, but it's just what works. So just keep that in mind. And I might also, this shape there, you'll notice the little description there says positive values are rounder, negative values make spiky. So in other words, if I set this like that, it's going to be spiky strands. And if I set it like that, it's going to be round strands. So let's just set that as 0.2, just for the sake of it. Okay, so specularity is off. That's all good. One thing to note though, although most of the particles, the size and the look of it is defined right here, you also need to go to the particle, into your particle settings again, and then go to render, which I think is the wrong way of doing it. I think you should have all of the way that, the settings for the appearance of particles should be in the material box right there. It shouldn't be separated like this. I think it's a little bit silly. Anyway, I'm bitching for some reason. Okay. You need to check strand render. Now, strand render was a new feature that was implemented, I think, during Big Buck Bunny, and I'm not a program, I don't understand all the ins and outs of it, but it renders the fur a lot faster. One thing to note though is that it will not render ray traced shadows. So any sort of ray tracing, it will not show up in reflections, shadows, things like that. So keep that in mind, but it does render faster. Also, B-spline, I think that makes the fur just look a little bit more smoother. Okay. Also, one thing to note here is that for the red particle system, as a default, it gives it the material 1. Now, that number 1 correlates to the number of material that is here. So if I add another one, then that's number 2. So, in saying that, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove that there, and just create another material right underneath it, call it white, set the specularity down, and I'm going to go here to our white particle system, down here to the render, and I'm going to click it so that it changes it to 2. So now it's using that material instead of the red material. So pretty easy, hopefully that makes sense. I'm also, because this is the white one now, I'm also going to check strand render and B-spline and change it to 2 as well. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Let me just check the child. Yes, there was one other thing. The reason this all looks a little bit too chaotic, you need to set the radius. So this is the radius of how wide the children are to their parenting particle. So I'm going to set this to a 0.06. And there we go. So now it's a lot more closer and a lot fluffier and, yeah, a lot nicer. Okay, now the shape of our white particle strands, I'm going to make them a lot smaller. In fact, I'm going to make them 0.01. Oh, have to check Blender units. 0.001. And the smallest tip possible, which is 0.001, like that. And I'm going to set it to a minimum of 1, and surface diffuse, which is a 0.05. I'm not sure if I explained surface diffuse, but surface diffuse makes it so that it sort of gives it like a nice even lighting over all of the particles. So it sort of applies the lighting to the whole particle instead of just each individual strand, which is important as well. And I'm also going to set the shape of it to a 0.2, just to make the end a little bit spiky. So that's pretty good. Okay, so I just set that there. We can see how that looks, and the red looks like that. Okay, I'm going to save this now in case Blender crashes. So we're recording 2. As you can see, the number of times I've had to do this project. All right. What I'm going to do now before I render it is I'm going to add that fluffy little ball on the end. So the quickest way to do that is if you select that edge there by holding down Alt and right click like so. I'm going to press Shift S and then select cursor to selected. And now, if we're still in edit mode, if we hit Shift A, I can now add a UV sphere. And that will put a UV sphere in the exact place that I want it, right at the end there. Like so. Might be a little bit bigger, something like that. It's pretty good. Make sure you apply the correct material. And that is pretty good. The bigger you make that ball, obviously, the bigger the fluffy ball will appear. Pretty easy. Now we need to actually make it so that ball has particles on it. So I need to add it to our vertex group. So very easy. With that ball there selected, vertex group, click assign, and you'll now see, ta-da, fluffy particles on the fluffy ball. Pretty easy. All right. Okay, now let's get into the rendering, the fun part, or the frustrating part if things don't work out well, which it frequently doesn't. Okay. Alright, now, I'm not sure if you saw the scene that I showed at the beginning, the finished scene, but I used a lot of area lamps. Area lamps help to give even lighting over everything, and is very good for studio-style lighting setups, which is, I guess, what this is. I'm not really sure what kind of lighting setup it is, but, you know, it'll work with studio lighting setup. I'm not sure what I'm saying now. So I'm going to make the size of this lamp 5. The reason for that is I wanted to give it like a nice big even lamp over the whole scene. So that's going to be our key light if you want to get technical. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I'm now going to create 2 lamps, one there and one there on opposite sides, just to give sort of, what do you call it, fill lighting on both sides of the Santa hat. And that's what I found gives a kind of nice result. I'm going to make the size of this area lamp a lot smaller though. And I'm also going to set the distance to 3. One thing a lot of people don't realize is that the distance that you set also affects the energy value. So the higher you set the distance, you'll notice the brighter that lamp becomes. So keep that in mind. In fact, if it was, in my opinion, there shouldn't even be a distance. It should just be energy, and then it affects whatever's in range, because the light does not stop there. It continues on. So what's the point of having a distance if the light doesn't stop where the distance ends? I don't know. I'm getting quite frustrated in this tutorial, aren't I? I'm just, oh man, venting. I'm going to set the energy to a 0.1, because it's just going to be a very subtle light. And I'm going to create another one on the exact opposite side, like so. Okay. Now, one thing I've found, which is you might want to note for, you know, future scenes that you create, if you just give the lamps just slightly differing different color values, it just gives it a little bit more realism. So for example, if you bought a studio lamp, the higher energy value, you know, I'm not sure like the scientific, like there's like a Kelvin graph and things like that, but the brighter the lamp is, the bluer it becomes and more whiter and things like that. So if it's a really dull lamp, then it becomes a little bit oranger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this one a little bit blue, like that. And I'm going to make this one just a little bit yellow. And what that'll do is it'll just sort of make it look like these lamps, just a different, they're not exactly identical lamps. And I'm going to make this one here just a little bit yellow as well. So that's, hopefully that'll give a kind of nice result. One thing to note, you remember I said that the strands will not show up, will not cast shadows onto your scene. So I'm going to turn off the shadows for both of these fill lights here. For the main light, I'm going to leave the shadows on, but I'm going to turn the samples up to 6. And what that'll do is it'll create a soft shadow underneath the mesh. So it won't actually cast shadows for the strands, but it'll cast it underneath the mesh. So it's kind of like faking ambient occlusion kind of thing. And also what I'm going to do is duplicate that area lamp, but I'm going to change it to a spot lamp, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to point this spot lamp like that. Let's just turn up the distance a little bit. And the angle of it, or the, I don't know what you call that, the size, like that, that's pretty good. And also, quick little tip, not sure if you guys realize there's a show cone option, which is kind of cool. I really wish we had this feature in like 2.49. It's just like really frustrating trying to figure out where the lamp is pointed, and I just discovered this feature the other day and I was like, whoa, this is awesome. So it's kind of cool. And I'm going to just make this only shadow. So the whole point of this lamp is to just cast shadow. But one thing you need to do is click buffer shadow. Like I said, the strands won't show up in ray traced shadow. However, it will show up in buffer shadow. So that's why we've created a lamp for the sole purpose of casting buffer shadow so that our strands will show up. I'm going to increase the energy amount to 2. And before we render, I'm also going to change the material for our ground plane there. I'm going to change it to a dark gray color. So almost black like that. Going to set the specularity to 0 and save it before you hit render because it crashes sometimes. And let's have a look at how that looks now. Okay, so it's not bad. A couple of things I'm going to show you. I mean, if you want to stop the tutorial here, that's fine. I mean, I don't blame you. I'm getting a bit bored of my own voice, to be honest. But the strands here, they look kind of abrupt, like they go up and then they just stop. And you know, if you wanted to give it more realism, what you can do is make it so that it fades out. So to do that, if you select the hat and then the white material, and then go to the texture options, click blend, okay. And then underneath color, click ramp, and then flip it. All right. And then for the coordinates, we're going to click strand, so that that white goes from the base all the way upwards like that. And then instead of color, check alpha. Now you won't see anything change to the material yet until we turn the alpha for our material all the way to 0. Now what that is going to do is it is now making that material, this texture right here, affect just the alpha. So it's going from a solid white color, a solid alpha color, slowly fading out the transparency as it goes upwards. And what that'll do is it'll just make just look a little bit fluffier and a little bit nicer. So that's a kind of interesting thing you can do. And also I might apply that same thing just to our red texture there. Just going to use the same texture like so. Apply that, mapping to strand like so. And that's not bad. Let's have a look. Oh, and also need to set the transparency like we did for the white. Okay, there we go. So now I've got them showing up like that. One other thing that I want to do is I want to make it so that just some of these particles are just a little bit lit up by the light. So they're kind of a little bit shiny. So to do that, of course, you use specularity. However, if I did that, what you would notice is that the actual material, the base mesh underneath, would show up, and it would look like plastic. Because basically what I want the material for the hair to have that light, shiny kind of look, but I want the base of it to not have any specularity. So to do that, what I need to do is to add a new material and click that little 2 to make it its own entity. I'm going to change the name to red base, like so. And I'm going to set the specularity to 0. So now we have a material with specularity on and a material with specularity off. Now all I need to do is select, let's see, Control W, unselect. In fact, actually, I think something's happened. I think we haven't even assigned the white material to this part here. It's just covered up with fur, so it doesn't really matter that much, but I don't know, it's a bit weird. Didn't really notice that. Like that. Let's hide this guy. Alright, now what I'm going to do is click assign there like that. Now what it's going to do is it's going to use, for our fur, under the particle settings, it's still going to use the first material, which is this one right here. However, I've assigned the mesh to use the red base material. So we've essentially got the fur using a different material to the base underneath it, which means now, if I render it, you should see a result like this. Ta-da! So there you go. That is the finished result. Hopefully you guys got something from this tutorial. Hope it was at least somewhat interesting. And as always, I'm interested in seeing what you guys create with it. So yeah, so that's all from me. It's Wednesday as I'm recording this, so it's 3 days until Christmas. Really excited. Yeah, I'm not actually excited about the actual Christmas aspect, but my girlfriend's coming back from Korea, so I'm like, yeah, awesome. So it's going to be the best Christmas ever. But yeah, so I'm actually going to be taking about 2 or 3 weeks off to sort of reassess the goals of Blend Guru and, you know, also probably spend time with my girlfriend. But yeah, so hopefully you guys will enjoy the time off, you know, go out there, be adventurous, come up with some new ideas and come back refreshed for a new year in Blender. So, thanks very much for watching, and until then, I'll see you next time.